Welcome. This is Raventail. You guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Very good. I'm a little bit distracted by Chris's background and then Peter's background. That's some next level high tech stuff, guys. No, it's good. It's good. I need to promote myself behind me. All right. Well, welcome to today's Q&A. I know we did one last week that we couldn't use, so thanks for coming back. I am Jerry Underhill, host of the Dusty Saddles and Raventails podcast. I'm not sure if any of you guys ever heard it, but I'll provide some link.
Yep.
Yeah. Who said that, Peter?
Yeah. Enjoyed a couple of episodes. You do a great job.
Well, so far it's mostly short stories that I've written and read, but coming up here, some long interviews with some of you even. So thanks for the compliment, man.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But I'll include some links at the bottom of this for the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and if you want to just go to YouTube or the internet, I'll provide some links. But a bit about me. I'm a human. I write horror, mostly Western horror at this point. I love horror for, I think, some of the reasons why the West is so popular and why it's so dear to your hearts. It often has a spiritual bent, philosophical bent, and it touches on man and nature, where the West is more a physical nature. Obviously, horror is more a super nature, right? It's the world beyond what we can see and hear and smell, and it's devastating and it's crushing and it's dark, whether it's a villain or a setting, and it destroys. But in my favorites, like Haunting Hill House, Midnight Mass, the light wins out in the end. And Nick, what is your favorite Western?
My favorite Western is No Name on the Bullet.
I thought it was going to be the original Westworld with Yul Brynner.
That was a good movie. Yul Brynner is a pretty great actor, and he's a lot of fun. But no, I like No Name on the Bullet. Audie Murphy, very good picture, very good story. Probably the basis of a million different Western stories. Audie Murphy should have got the Oscar for the movie. He was incredible in it, better than he was in any of his other pictures. Really, very good movie. And I remember seeing that one several times as a kid and enjoying it very much. And very much the kind of Western story that I would enjoy reading if I were a reader. And I'm very, very pleased that we have so many books of that quality to feed to our readership.
I just went with the oldest actor I could think of because you have old tastes. You got what, 10,000 albums in your place, and I just thought Yul Brynner is perfect.
Well, I have Yul Brynner is not the oldest. Is not the. Go further back. Go back for Roy Rogers or Gene
that was
Autry.
A stretch already.
Tom Mix would be old, man.
Who?
Tom Mix, yeah.
Tom Mix.
Rest in peace.
I thought Audie Murphy did a great job portraying Audie Murphy.
To Hell and Back. Yeah.
We really captured the character, you know.
He really did. I mean, it was very difficult for him. He had to stretch a whole long way. Jerry, to Hell and Back, Audie Murphy played himself in a movie about his life as America's most decorated soldier, and that's what they're talking about, to Hell and Back.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'll probably not give it a try, but
it's a very good picture. For the sake
of being polite, I'm going to give it a try.
The boy stands there and mows down like 2,000. It seems like 2,000 Germans. And he just mows them down. I mean, and man, he was a wild animal in that movie.
Yeah,
real life as well.
And not a very big guy, kind of a mild guy. Really, when the crunch came down, he performed. My only critique with his movies is he never got dirty, never got a bloody nose. I mean, gets beats up and he's still in those nice tight pants and shirt. But anyways, hey, Gary, if I may. Let me throw something out to you, or Jerry, I'm sorry. I just came across a really weird Western true story that probably you could have fun with. And there's a connection between this being one of the first mass murders and Jack the Ripper. Can I just butt in here and tell you a little bit about it?
Hell yeah.
Okay. 1884, Austin, Texas. Called one of the nicest towns to live in at the time. A lot of peaceful people, banks, movies, 3 colleges. All of a sudden, servant ladies start getting killed. Young black women, for the most part, in the beginning, and then some white women, and brutally killed with axes and dragged out of their homes and butchered and heads split open and really nasty stuff. Police rounded up about 400 suspects in the course of a year. This went on for about a year. He killed about 8 people. Went on for a year, never could figure out who did it. Then, shortly after that, you know your history, Nick. Similar
Called you out,
murders.
Nick. Where'd you go?
Similar similar murders started happening in London, and they called him Jack the Ripper. Now, the interesting thing is, here's the connection. There was a Malaysian cook who left his ship and started working in a hotel in Austin, Texas. He worked there for about a year, and when he left, the murders ended. Guess where he ended up? London, England. And when he there, the murders started again. And when he left there, the murders ended. And they actually sent some detectives from London down to Austin to talk to the police down there. True, look it up. But that's kind of, you could probably take off on that somewheres, Jerry.
It kind of sounds like you should take off on that.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, maybe I will. It's featured in my next broadcast.
I'm not sure I'm
Anyways,
qualified.
I just wanted to throw that out there, but I came across that. I go, really? But yeah.
I mean, it's in line with my my idea of a good Western / horror. My my favorite Western, at least now, is Bone Tomahawk. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
No.
No, it's sort of this delicious confluence of the West and horror, because you get some of the stuff that makes the West so great, you know, faith and community, man and nature, simple justice. It's sort of cheating because it has Kurt Russell playing sort of a Wyatt Earp character and and sort of a Doc Holliday light character in it, but it mixes in some cannibalism and some brutal scenes. So it's really the perfect mixture for me.
There you go.
Matt, I don't know you. Hi, man. I haven't ever met you before.
Hi.
What's your favorite
What do you
Western?
want? High Noon.
High Noon?
Yeah.
What's your favorite Western as a kid? Because one of the things that's most interesting to me about Western authors and Western creators is what it was that drew them into the genre.
The Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Used to watch the repeats of it.
I mean, it makes sense, right? They're sort of the original comic book heroes, the original Marvel universe.
And my grandmother gave me Louis L'Amour books to read. So.
Do you think that has much of an influence on the kind of West you write now?
Yes. Of course.
Okay, how so?
Well, he was such a great storyteller, so you want to be something close to that.
Okay. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
How's it? Good in you?
Live from South Africa, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Born and raised?
Born and raised.
What drew you to the West, man?
Oh, I just loved it. Same as Matt, grew up reading Louis L'Amour, watching Westerns, cheapest from, I can't even remember how young, Last of the Mohicans, Chamber of Commerce of Wildside, Briscoe County Jr. So there's there's a little bit of sci-fi in there for you with Briscoe County. What were the other ones? Magnificent Seven. Yeah, they're just lots there. It's just, I just find it fascinating. You know, it's not South African, obviously, but just love that somebody would ride into a town and then kick a bit of ass. You know, there's
simple
wrongs
justice.
to be righted. The guy comes in, does what needs doing, and then rides off or stays there and gets the girl, becomes part of the community. And it's just a fascinating bit of history, and the period in history, because people settled problems themselves. There was no law out there quite often, so it was stand up and be counted or be buried.
Damn, well put, man. I mean, the West is having a resurgent moment here with stuff like Yellowstone, 1883. Outer Range, which is a Western sci-fi on Prime. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
Yeah,
pretty
I-
popular.
yeah,
You guys have seen Outer Range?
Yes.
yeah, I have.
What do you think about it?
That's well, that's a good sci-fi for you. It's a little bit of a stretch there, a little bit, but it's interesting. And you just I won't ruin it for anybody that goes looking at it, but yeah, different.
Well, let's just get right to it, Peter, because I won't pretend to know you
All
well,
right.
but I remember from our last Q&A that there was some fire in your belly over historical inaccuracies in 1883.
Hmm.
And I'm sorry that wasn't included because that recording was deleted. So do you want to level brimstone right now?
No, no problem. I can throw rocks any time of
Do
day.
it.
All right. So you guys, those of you that have seen 1883 probably have seen this. You saw the first episode right away. There's really some problems with that, and I'm really surprised Sam Elliott, being an old cowboy, didn't pull the director aside and say, "Wait a minute, you got this all wrong." First of all, these German immigrants. Okay, it's 1883 now. When was the Transcontinental Railroad connected? About, I think it was I don't know for sure. I think it was 1867. Okay. So in 1883, if you were down there in Galveston or Houston, Texas, you could get on a train and ride it up to Portland, be up there in a few days, cost you about $200. Why in God's name would you want to hitch up a bunch of horses to a wagon and spend months on the trail going to Portland, Oregon? First inaccuracy, I think. Number two, they usually left from St. Louis to go to Portland, go to Oregon. They sure as heck didn't leave from way down in Texas. Not that I could find. I did some research. If I'm wrong, tell me. Secondly, Sam Elliott goes crazy when he finds out that they're using oxen to pull their wagons, and he makes them buy horses. Wrong. Oxen was preferred beast of burden for wagons because they were very durable, not as fast as an oxen. So you got me going, Jerry. Not as fast as a horse, but they didn't need grain, and a horse needs grain. If you guys that know horses, to maintain their health and
Quick
stamina.
question there, Peter, and to interrupt
Yes.
you quickly.
Sure.
Were any of those inaccuracies done just to further the plot of the story, of the series?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't think so, Chris, to be honest with you. It was there's other ways of doing it. Obviously, there was a lot of problems with the Germans being not very skilled in the ways of the West, and they had to learn on the way. So I think that all made the plot. But if it took place in 1863 or 1873, it'd be a little more believable. But by then, in fact, in 7 more years, the U.S. Census Bureau says the frontier's closed. That's it. It's settled. So those are some of the inaccuracies. He goes after the Germans because he inspects them for smallpox and finds smallpox on some of them. Well, that's wrong again, because in 1870, German government made it mandatory for Germans to get a smallpox vaccine. But chances are these people would not have smallpox. There's others, but those are the 3 glaring ones that anybody that knows anything about history. And the Indians like to rob and steal horses. They didn't care much for oxen. They didn't know what the heck to do with an oxen. So anyways, I'll let it go at that. If anybody wants to comment, go right ahead. It's a good movie. The acting's great. The storyline is great. A lot of action, but
Something tells me you're not going to actually let it go.
I think if I could enter here, I think the writer has a tendency to be inaccurate. They're getting ready to do a Bass Reeves thing, and the first thing they talked about is Bass Reeves was the symbol for the Lone Ranger, which is pure bullcrap. Pure bullcrap. Started by the guy that wrote the first autobiography of Bass Reeves, because he wanted to sell more books when Walt Disney was coming out with the Lone Ranger story. He started talking about that Bass Reeves was the symbol. That's bull crap. I've researched it. It cannot have happened.
I was going to say your bona fides. You wrote a Bass Reeves series, right?
I've written 3 books about his life, and most of it's pretty accurate. There's, of course, there's a little fiction in it, but most of it is based on actual court records. And what I took is what they happened, and then expanded. If this is the way it happened, what was taking place while it was going on. That's the way basically I wrote the books, and they've been very well received, and I'm proud of that. But it continually irritates me that they talk about him being the symbol of creator of the Lone Rangers. Not possible. First of all, why would they call him a ranger? Bass Reeves was a marshal. Why would you call him a ranger? Second of all, the Indians had their own police force. Tonto wouldn't have ridden with the Lone Ranger. Get out of here. I mean, it's just everything in it's crazy. The story was, yes, of course, originally written in Detroit. And yes, Bass Reeves did go to Detroit several times, delivering prisoners to the prison there. But the latest he could have gone was 1908. The series didn't start till 1930s. There's no way you can tell me that someone recalled that story for those lengths of time if they talked to him. Bass Reeves was an outdoorsman. What would he be doing in Detroit? I mean, is he going to be in some bar talking about all the great things he's done in the West, and you remember that for the next 20 years so as you can write a story about it? It's just all bull. I mean,
All right,
just,
settle down, Fred. I feel like I'm being yelled at by God with that voice of yours.
Okay.
You, I saw in a bio that you grew up in Oklahoma, right? You're a history teacher?
Yes, sir. Yes,
I was a history teacher too.
Huh?
I was
You were what?
a history teacher also.
Well, that's good. I was born in little Seminole, Oklahoma, made for Indians. I was raised most of my time in Pawnee, Oklahoma, raised with the Indians. And when I wrote my first book, which was not a Western, it went so dang well, I said, wait a minute, maybe I ought to write about things that I really was involved with. So Eastern Oklahoma, which was called Indian Territory, was probably the most violent place in the history of the United States. Everybody talks about Tombstone and all those places. There was 40 U.S. Marshals killed right around Muskogee, Oklahoma. 40. Nearly all the U.S. Marshals that were ever killed were killed in Oklahoma. It was a violent, continually crazy place, full of stories. I mean, there's one after another of lawmen, of bad men. Of interesting enough, no one seems to realize this: the U.S. Marshals, a lot of the U.S. Marshals were actually outlaws, and actually a lot of U.S. Marshals then became outlaws. The Dalton family had 2 U.S. Marshals in it. I mean, and one of them was very good. He got killed right off the bat.
Well, let me stop because I want to ask a pointed question about the challenge of being accurate and if you're writing about Native Americans, and I thought Leroy was going to be here, I was going to talk about African Americans, but the minority voice is often a quiet one, especially as we've written and rewritten history. What kind of lengths do you go to be accurate about Native Americans? Because what Chris is saying is right. Sometimes it's such a challenge to be accurate, but sometimes the story has to prevail. And I spend a lot of time trying to make sure that I can line the two up. And obviously as a teacher, a big part of it is teaching as complicated a version of the truth as you can. But, it's hard. So what was your approach? What was some of the hardest research you had to do?
Are you talking about writing back, or are you just talking?
No, I'm not talking
about
about Bass Reeves, and I'm definitely not talking about Potosi.
Okay,
I'm talking about
the way I write is I have a subject and I write what I know about it, and then I go and do research. I go to Google, I start there, and it carries me on through. And the thing about it is it always exposes me to something I had absolutely no idea about. And it expands your knowledge on what you're writing. And it could even create a whole new story about a whole new setting and a whole new place if you just follow the links that it sends you to. Most of it, I feel, and I may be wrong, but I feel that most of the stuff on Google is pretty accurate. I'm sure it can be challenged in some places, but most of it I appreciate as accurate. Now, there are lots of Oklahoma Historical Society has lots of stories in it that you can actually contact them and say, I want to know about, and they can give you things that they say are historical about that event or that time or that place or those people. So, and I understand that Montana's got a very good system like that, very good, that you can check with them about events that happened or people that happened in Montana. And I think you can find that in most any state. Now, there was one state, I think it was Kansas, that I tried to do that with, and it wasn't quite as in depth as I thought it should have been.
Peter,
Yes.
I heard you talk last time about guns, about getting the gun right. Am I remembering that correctly?
Well, yeah, I think, as Fred says, I think we all try to, my characters are basically fictional. I might throw in a real life character in there at one point in time, but for the most part, they're fictional. But I try to make the time period accurate in terms of everything from the guns to the technology they might have had. Did they have telegraph, railroad, or did they use smoke signals? Right now, my series of the what I consider the first mountain men who went over the Appalachian Mountains, their technology was different than the mountain men of 100 years later, in terms of their firearms, in terms of how they lived off the land and things like that. So that's where I try to be accurate. And when you talked about, Native peoples, I think the hardest thing I have is to try to put down indigenous Native Americans instead of Indians, which I don't do. What I work around with, the way I work around that is I use the tribe's name. So in my current series over the mountains, a big tribe that was a real problem for them over there were the Hurons. Nasty people. I'm sorry, but they were nasty people, and they sided with the French, and they didn't like the English coming over and taking the land. But I try to be accurate with them. I try to give them, their due, and they were fighting for their land. They're fighting for their survival. They knew, as most of the Indian tribes knew, I think, in a little bit of research, Fred knows them a lot better than I do. They knew that their days were over. They knew in their hearts that there's no way they could possibly defeat, this horde of white men coming over the mountains or across the plains or, whatever. But they fought for as long as they could to maintain their way of life. You have to respect that. But
it's amazing how whitewashed the West is.
Yes.
Especially in earlier versions of the Western genre.
Sure.
I know you and Fred have talked at length about how much of a melting pot it actually was.
Sure.
And have given voice to some of those minorities.
Yeah, the Spanish, come on. The course came from the Spanish to start off with. I mean, the Spanish were, the basis of the Westerns. Get serious. They had the saddles, they had the horses. They taught the cowboys how to herd cattle. They imported the cattle. I mean, at least a third of the cattle drivers were Mexicans. Of course, I don't know what they were doing in town because you never read a story about them in a bar getting in a fight. I don't know what the hell they were doing when they finally got their cattle delivered. But that's that. And then, of course, a large percentage were black because after the Civil War, they were unemployed and those that had enough sense to get out of the South needed jobs. And boom, the cattle industry was where the jobs were. So a tremendous number of them, the number of the quote, quote, cowboys were black. And you should deal with it. And in my opinion, if you want a good story, you need to delve those all folks together, including the Indians. One of the things Peter said about research was very interesting. I was writing about mountain men and we was talking about the Blackfeet. I wondered, why the heck did they have that name? Unbelievably, they had black feet. The other thing that was really interesting, they were afraid of water. They thought spirits lived in the water, and therefore they were never in a canoe. They were never any of those things. And I used that as a part of a story of how some of my people got away from them. They crossed a roaring river, and the Blackfeet wouldn't cross.
That's why they had black feet, Fred.
That could be why. Could be why.
Hold on. I've been kind of looking at Gary out of the corner of my eye for a while because I didn't introduce him earlier, and the look on his face is sort of getting me in the spine. Hi, Gary.
Hey guys,
I'm sorry, brother. I meant to say hi to you earlier.
no problem. Everything's fine. I'm
What's your-
enjoying
what's your-
listening.
What's your background? What do you bring into this Western world?
My background? Grew up. I'm a New Yorker, Long Island.
Okay.
Uh,
Teacher, stripper, plumber.
yeah. Graphic artist,
Oh, okay.
art director, creative consultant, and art teacher. I was a teacher too.
Huh.
So, always into Westerns ever since I was, little.
Is it the landscape that drew you to the West
Oh, it's
as an artist?
combination of many factors, of course. A generation, we grew up, as everyone will tell you, watching Roy Rogers, Lone Ranger, Outlaw Cassidy, and so forth. So we were always running around with the cowboy hats and boots and the gun and holster and the badge. And but I managed to get out west a number of times over the years. First time I was about 5-6 years old, and my Uncle Tommy drove across country from our house on Long Island to Los Angeles, and he had his dog Buster with him, who he called Buster the Sheriff, and he always had a sheriff's badge on his collar and a little pistol. And of course, I always had my cowboy accoutrements too. So for a 5-6-year-old to take that journey was quite an adventure, and I'll always remember the sights, sounds, and smells of traveling across country like that, especially the West, the desert, seeing the Native Americans, the horses, the Pueblos. And,
It's as charming and seductive as all hell, isn't it?
oh yeah.
It's always interesting to me though, to think about what a person's background is. For example, a graphic artist or somebody who's a visual artist, and how that affects what they write. Because, if you're a lawyer, maybe you focus on the justice side of things. I know our friend Peter served in Vietnam. Thank you. And I sometimes wonder if that has affected maybe his focus on the fight as an element of the West. Do you think that?
You're asking me that question, or
it's a little preview in the biz? It's a little bit of a preview. We're going to get there in a second, but I want to ask. Oh, okay. I want to ask Gary, if being a graphic artist, if there's anything about visual arts that has affected his writing.
Sure. Yeah, the way the perspectives of looking for textures, colors, line, all the different elements of art that have a great effect on. There's such a connection between the visual and the literary.
You find yourself being more descriptive than most?
I don't know if I'm more descriptive. I'm descriptive in my own way. I like to depending on the style that I'm writing in. But certainly writing Westerns lends itself to, to the broad landscapes and all. I mean, it's a great open canvas for an artist and for a writer. Yeah, just not only as far as the landscapes, but as far as the human drama and the kind of stories that you could write. The time and place of the West, you're at the convergence of an old world and a new world with new technologies, the Industrial Revolution rising up, and it's just fascinating. And people from all different walks of life, diversity, all different ethnicities, nationalities, and social backgrounds. So different voices, different vernaculars, and it all lends itself. So writing the world of the Wild West that we love to visit is really, well, it's all encompassing.
It really is, man. It's sort of a bottomless sea once one of them tendrils comes up and pulls you under, right? All right, Peter, talk to me.
What would you like to know?
I want to know, well, first of all, I want to say thank you again for your service.
Oh, okay. Thank you for your support.
And I want to know if you think it sort of orients you towards the fight when you write Westerns.
Well, without going into a lot of detail, anybody that's been in combat can add a little bit to a fight, I guess, because, that's why I have so much admiration for Audie Murphy. I mean, first of all, I probably can't say what I need to say on here because it would be bleeped out, but you're scared blankety blank. And the brave ones, or as John Wayne says, you're scared as hell, but you sail up anyways. Being scared is not necessarily being a coward. Being scared is dealing with that fear and going out and doing what you have to do. So bringing that to the Westerns, yeah, I think it helps in my description. Of course, we weren't walking down the main street of a town with shooters, or we weren't chasing Indian. Well, I guess we were chasing Indian.
Well, just in the sense that there's
yeah,
a bad guy and the good guy fights.
Yeah. I mean, totally different situations and totally different type of combat. But again, you're facing, real dangers, and you have to react to it. So yeah, I guess it does. I never really thought about it that way, Jerry. But
well, I mean,
sure,
nowadays, society has all kinds of tools to deal with ne'er-do-wells. But one of the nice things about the West is the gunfighter and the marshal. Totally different way of mechanism.
Yeah, that it was a different time. It was a very violent time, and so I think somebody said, maybe Chris said, there was you're out there by yourself mostly, and you couldn't rely on picking up the phone and dialing 911. You had to do what you had to do to defend your homestead, defend your family. It was just the way of life then, and I think most people accepted that life was brutal, that life was short. I forget what town it was. It's some town in California, or maybe it was Dodge City. I forget now. But they had the three major causes of death in 1876 were diarrhea, being shot, and being stabbed. I think I would go with to the second or third.
Yeah, real pick 'em.
Death. Yeah, I don't want to go the diarrhea route. But anyways, that type of culture, and there were a lot of people out west that did not wear guns, that came out to try and live a decent life. There were merchants and tradesmen and carpenters and blacksmiths, and they kept to themselves, raised their families, and built the schools and the churches and all that. So it wasn't all just shoot 'em up, type of situation. We dwell on that, but as Fred said, there's so much diversity out there, so many stories that have yet to be told. The women's side of it, I brought that up last time. So many women that were real characters out there. People like Minnie the Gambler, and Dirty Alice, and Rattlesnake Kate, and Stagecoach Mary, and A whole bunch of them. Some of them were gamblers, some of them were prostitutes, some of them just fell into bad situations, like Calamity Jane. She didn't start out being that way. Just situations happened that she kind of found herself in that situation. So they did what they had to do to exist and survive, Jerry. And anyways, I went off track with that. But yeah, I think having at least some experience in war kind of lends itself to being able to write a scene, at least how people might feel and react in a bad situation.
Well, you brought up diversity, and I'm glad you did. Matt, for me, I know I need to be inclusive. I know I need to have characters that are women or African Americans, Spanish, gay. But it's hard because that's not my own voice, so I don't want to do it in a way that's sort of halfway. What's your approach? Do you go into a book trying to make sure that not all your characters are white men?
Yes. What I try to do is find journals from people who actually lived out there, and then use those experiences to create the other characters, especially the characters now writing from a woman's standpoint or something else. I think that helps.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective. So you have a setting and sort of a overarching story, and then you try to find journals to build out the actual characters.
Yep. A lot of times that's what I'll do. And it's fun. And it actually helps you learn more about how they lived and, just everything they experienced. Like he was saying, you have to suffer from stomach problems or things like that. Things we don't have to worry about now. We can get up, take a Tums, but they couldn't do that back then.
Well, that's a good segue too. Chris, you want to die by diarrhea, stab, or bullet wound?
I think bullet wound would be the quickest and the best on knife wounds. Definitely not the diarrhea.
Well, I mean, maybe you get dehydrated and you just sort of pass out and keep pooping. I just don't want to. Don't stab me.
Don't go there.
Shoot me quicker.
All right, fair enough. But they're going to shoot you anywhere.
I think an interesting thing is that there was a statement that coffee saved more people's lives than anything else, because cholera was so dang bad and no one knew what it was, and they boiled their water to make their coffee. And those people that drank a lot of coffee didn't have the cholera, so they lived. Those that drank out of the creek with the dead deer 100 yards above them died. So the gun wasn't what was killing people, it was the diseases that were out there.
Well, ain't it true that the pyramids were built by people drinking beer or mead or something like that?
Sure.
Whiskey, beer,
yeah.
but there was a lot of bad whiskey that killed people, and that's not talked about too much. But that was a big problem.
Yep.
We got a newcomer here. Hey, Gary, other Gary Diamond.
Hi.
All right, beer or coffee? How do you avoid cholera?
Well, I'd first of all have the coffee to keep me awake so that I can drink the beer.
Okay, I didn't expect the accent. Charming.
Yes, from England, from good old England.
Damn it, you didn't have to tell me. What's your background?
What, in writing?
In the world.
In the world?
Yeah.
Well, I was in business for most of my years until I retired a few years back. I've been writing since I was, 15, 16. Started off with writing comedy and progressed into novels. And I won't say recently, but more recently into the Western genre. So, I don't spend too many hours without writing.
Really? You came to it only recently? What drew you in?
Well, when I say recently, within the last 5 years.
Okay. Was it Westworld?
No, it was, for me, being the age that I am, I was always more than interested, but almost obsessed with American Western shows of the 60s, the Virginian, the Gunsmokes, the Bonanzas, and I liked the concept of that, but I also wanted to put a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of realism into it, and then add what I always thought would be the natural progression for a TV program like the ones I mentioned in the 60s, is if they were made today, they wouldn't just end at the end of an episode. There would be a follow-up. There would be something that would take them into the next episode, and it would almost be serialized. And that's how I started to write my series, so that they are independent stories, but they move between episodes, if you like.
Okay. What's the series you would point people to if any reader wanted to find Gary Diamond?
Well, I guess at the moment with Dusty Saddles, I've got 2 series on, but the first one is the second book has just come out this week, funnily enough. It's called Abraham and Lincoln, and they are whodunits, Western whodunits. And each title is a different, if you like, crime or whodunit or mystery they have to solve. Abraham is a bit of an Agatha Christie style detective, an old man from London, and Lincoln is the typical Western sheriff, and they start off slightly difficult, in a difficult situation, and they come together as a bit of a unit. And that, I think, has been an interesting concept for me. I've thoroughly enjoyed writing them. The second book, The Texan, is out now. The first book was Who Killed Seth Madison, and I feel that there's got a lot of stories still to come out for them both. Third book, hopefully not too far in the future.
People taking civil liberties with Lincoln's likeness. Some make him a vampire slayer. Some make him an Agatha Christie-esque detective.
Yeah,
I like your approach, Matt. Same question to you.
Sorry.
I was asking Matt same question as far as I think he was on mute. There you are.
Yeah.
Same question to you, Matt. Series you would point readers to.
Well, I have the ranch detective Linus Sutton. It's not so much a whodunit. It's he gets involved in these things and helps people, kind of like the Virginian. So, I love that show too. So, but yeah, I have 6 of those right now. So
I haven't ever seen it. Is that a PBS thing? Prime, Netflix?
No, the Virginian? No.
Yeah. I haven't heard of it. Sorry.
It's an old one.
It was, I think 70s. So
so it means it was good.
Very.
See, I'm just an uncultured.
They had different characters. That the Virginian would appear in almost every episode, but he wasn't always the main character.
That's right. Yeah.
So
I'll hunt it down.
really well done.
Other Gary Kamen, same question to you. Series you would point people toward, or book? I think you're on mute, brother. You are on mute, brother. It's okay. Hey.
Yeah, I would go with the Caleb Moses series, or else
Okay.
Good with the Gun series. One of those 2.
Any former presidents featured in it? Anything like that?
Here and there, we have some historical figures popping up. We do. And then I'm working on a co-write right now with Larry Copeland.
Oh, Macon Steele. That's his author name, right? I think Larry's pseudonym is Macon Steele.
Yeah, so that should be a fun one too.
Okay. Chris from South Africa. How's about you?
Probably the Steve Savage Bounty Hunter series. I'm a huge Marvel fan. Love the Avengers. Everybody brings something a bit different to the party. So my characters, it's a team of bounty hunters who are quite diverse. One's a gunslinger, one's a martial artist from China, kung fu expert. And then I have a guy from Britain who's an inventor who came over. So the first 3 books here, that's the origin story for Steve Savage, how he became a bounty hunter. Next one, he meets Chen Li, and then third one, they have Xavier joining the group. So in each given situation, somebody brings something a little bit different. So if it's hand-to-hand combat, who better than a kung fu expert? If you need some, if a situation calls for a crazy gadget, then you've got your inventor there. So it's been a lot of fun to read. And I think it's a pretty decent series. This is the one I've had a few people saying it would be a great series on Netflix.
I love that idea,
Wild
man.
West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Original
kind of, Wild West meets Avengers.
meets Avengers, original Avengers. Perfect. Well, Peter, he used his background as a prop in his answer. So your turn, buddy.
Well, the two series, one is Zach Watkins, Mountain Man, and this again talks about him going over the Appalachian Mountains with his Mohegan friend Henry. So I got that little diversity in there, and his wife Waddy. Zach Watkins is actually the name of a great grandfather who fought in the Revolutionary War, and Waddy is also a great grandmother. Supposedly was part Indian, although I can't find any proof of that. So I would point him to that because it's a little different than the Rocky Mountain Men. But the Rocky Mountain Men is Bear Willis, which has done very well for me. I think I'm on 7 or 8 books, and enjoy writing about him. He has a little sense of humor. He's kind of a big old guy that usually uses his size and strength to deal with issues. And with a sense of humor. So those are the ones that I'm currently working on now. I'm trying to come up with some new ideas, but anyways, that's where I would point people.
I think you should narrate Westerns for Audible, Peter.
Well, yeah, if they pay me enough, I would, Nick.
There it is. Everybody scream at Nick.
Hey.
Yeah,
Now, I run
yeah.
Dusty Saddle, not Audible, man. If Audible want to pay you.
Well, I'm glad to do it. When are we going to get on? Well, I won't put you on the spot.
No,
You can
do
put
it,
me on the
man.
spot. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Audiobooks. They outsell ebooks. Audiobooks, Nick.
Well, we have 37 of them in motion at the moment, Pete.
We have
Okay.
37 audiobooks in motion, and Peter nor I are involved.
Well,
Yeah, I guess we would have known about it.
well,
Yeah.
I tell you, certain authors came to me and said they needed audiobooks first, man, and I was held against the wall. I couldn't stop myself. They made me do it. I couldn't help it. I said no, and they said, hey, if you don't do it, you're in trouble. So I'm in trouble.
Well, I'm
We
glad
got
Peter yelled at you.
You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 authors right now.
I seem
that are
to
saying,
recall we had this conversation. It's like
Nick, come on, man.
2021, 2020.
I
I
have
think we
to.
need audiobooks.
I have to go alphabetically.
Chris,
Oh, gee.
Steve for
Well,
Chris.
that puts Chris and I and Fred all right down the bottom of the list.
No,
here.
C, Chris.
Oh, Chris, yeah, there you go.
Second name alphabetically. I'm afraid. Gunther Aardvark is the first guy to be done.
I'm going to change my name to something. Yeah, Ace.
Aaron Anderson.
Currently, it's
There you go.
admin.
Well, yeah, there we go, Nick. I don't know.
You
why
should
I'm
be
the
first.
He's the
Pete.
admin.
You should be first. We got it wrong. I'm sorry.
I feel like
I won't live that long till you get to the T's for credit.
I feel like Peter's love language is righteous anger. I love it.
Well, the thing is though, the gentleman with the Z in his second name, he's the guy that's gonna have to wait all eternity.
Yeah,
And think about our biggest seller, Mr. Wayne Winkle. He's down there in the W's. Now he's got to wait. It's terrible.
Poor Wayne. Yeah.
All right, Fred. Same question to you. What's the series or book that you point readers to get a taste of Fred's staff?
Well, I've only got, of course, the Bass Reeves was a 3-book series. And then I wrote several fictional based around on him. But the only series I've got is Will Thomas, and I've got 8 books out. I'm in the process of doing another. That sold very well when I first started, and then I kind of let it slide, and they're not doing as well as I would like for them to do. But with the new book and maybe some more promotion, they'll get back on the road to
Is that
success.
you yelling at Nick now too?
Well, no. I do enough yelling at him privately.
Okay, well,
Don't have to be on the
Well,
screen.
public hangings are best.
Jerry, I
Yeah.
have to tell you, it's like talking to God, talking to Fred Stapp.
That's it. The voice.
It's like the
man,
voice of
booms.
God comes at you and you don't know what to do with yourself. I mean, I'm bad enough, but he's worse.
Yeah.
You know, I do enough yelling, but he does even a lot more than I do. But you know who the biggest yeller on this call is?
Who that is?
The biggest yeller on this call is Gary Diamond down there. You've never been yelled to, you've been yelled at by an
Really?
Englishman. I'm teasing. I just wanted to torment Gary.
I'll keep that in mind.
You got to yell more at me, Gary.
Doesn't seem like
Okay.
it works though.
Okay, no problem.
Well, you know,
Back to Jerry, back to my series.
Yes,
Actually, you could
course.
probably count. I've written several books under the title of Robert H. Hanlon, and most all of them are timber, Jack Timber books, and so it would basically be a series. In fact, I just finished one of those, but like I said, I'm starting like tomorrow of my new book on a Will Thomas. I enjoy it. I enjoy doing the research. I've tried to put a lot of history in it, and as a matter of fact, in the Will Thomas thing, there's several of the books that at the back of it, I wrote actual historical things of why that was involved and how it was involved. I'm an old history teacher, and that was why I started writing to start off with, is to make history interesting and to get people to read and learn something that they've never been exposed to.
You mean like you attach like an appendix at the end, sort of like Tolkien? Explain. That's cool.
Yeah, I actually broke down and said, on this, I mentioned this, and this is exactly how it happened. I mentioned this, and this is exactly how it happened. I mentioned that, and I mentioned this, and it did not happen. Do not believe that. For instance, in the very start of it, it talks about a black kid in Nebraska and his family being caught by slave traders and taken back to, and there was no blacks. There was only 50 blacks in Nebraska at the time. So it did not happen, but that was the basis of the story. I was actually given that, start off with this, and found out not accurate, but it was already in there. And so I said, don't believe that, believe this.
Thanks, Fred. Thank you, everybody. This was a lot of fun. That's all for me. I'm personally happy that this pushed Nick up to 9 o'clock or whatever it is there. So right up into his bedtime.
it's not my bedtime. I have to go over and sit there and do the same thing with the horror authors now, which is a far more grisly prospect.
Nick, you've got it wrong. You got it wrong. What you've got to go and do is get cracking on those audiobooks.
Hell
That's
yeah,
it.
he does.
Well, you
That's
know,
right. That's right.
well, you know, Chris, I will slave through the night to get you an audiobook.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay,
I
Nick,
will
what-
slave.
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow
thing-
morning,
First thing.
you cruel African, you
The
cruel
thing-
man.
The thing is, Chris, it's going to be Nick doing the narrative. So
Oh, perfect.
No, it's not going to be me doing the narrative, Pete. It's not going to be me. No. It'll be somebody. I don't know, somebody in Russia or something. We can have them done in Russia.
there you go.
A harsh
why
Russian
not?
accent for a Western.
Can you imagine? Vodka.
Yeah, vodka.
Yorkshire. We need it in Yorkshire accent, Scottish, and then Russian.
There you go. That's the way to do it. Yorkshire
Alright.
pudding.
Well, Nick, good night, buddy. Maybe sleep time tea. Okay, decaf.
You bet, Jerry. Thank you,
Sleep well.
everybody, for inviting me to this interview. I've enjoyed
Awesome,
it.
Well,
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Take
Thanks,
care,
Jerry.
guys.
Bye bye.
Take
Really
care.
does.
Bye-bye.
Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much.
everyone.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Enjoy